All right, so this is CapCut. So there are plenty of great software out there for video editing. The reason, yeah, and CapCut is very good, but I guess the reason that we sort of start here is because it's literally free. So if you can use a free tool, it's not to say that you can't advance to something else further down the track, but let's just start with this one for the moment. So one of the great features about CapCut, and I'm just going to rearrange my timeline a little bit here, is that we've got the ability to add captions and actually have them physically show up on the screen. If you do have an SRT file, if you're using some kind of tool to generate the captions, you can literally just sort of drag it and drop it into the media library. And then if you go to text, it'll actually pop up in this local caption section. But if you haven't done that, and again, the great thing about short form vertical video is that it is short. So even if you have to adjust some manual captions yourself, it's not a huge job. So just make sure that you are in the text section of CapCut, go to auto captions, specify the language that you're using. Again, we've got English here. There is an option to clear the current captions as well. So if you've already got some captions that may be incorrect, you can do that. And we can hit this create button. And it'll do its thing in the background. And eventually we will actually see the captions that it has produced for us. Obviously, any of these automatic caption things aren't perfect. So it's really important to actually go in and double check what we're seeing here for accuracy. Because sometimes these things can be funny little errors and sometimes they can border on being offensive. So we want to make sure that we're not putting things out into the world that we don't want to be there. So now that we've actually got our captions selected over here, we can come up to captions. These are listed out. I guess the other thing, and again, it slightly annoys me, is that these captions are totally in lowercase. So I would probably encourage you to include a bit of capitalization here as well. But essentially, we can go through each one of these and we can just make sure that what is actually written here is correct. But we also want to think about how these things are displayed at the moment, because at the moment you probably can't even see it, but the text is coming up white on top of my white shirt in this particular image. So if we head over to the text options, which is another tab over here in CapCut, we can change the fonts. And I guess the first thing to note is we have this apply to all option. And I do recommend that you come in here and actually do this and apply it to all before you do much else. So what we'll do, we can pick a font, we can change our font size. Normally I like to do this at about 11. I could pick a different font. Sometimes I like to use this sort of bold font, which is kind of, I don't even know which popular creator it was that sort of popularized the use of that one, but it is an all caps thing. Again, that may or may not be great for you. You can decide on that for yourself. But if we scroll down, we've got options here to make it bold, underlined, italic. And we can also change the case. So we can change this from uppercase, lowercase, and title case. And this is actually a brand new feature. This was one of the things that was introduced before I upgraded my software, literally before the show started. But again, for our purposes, we probably want to come in and change the color, because at the moment we can't see that white where it is, but I'm probably going to move it. So we might just make that red for the moment. We've got all these alignment options. We've got a number of different presets as well. So it could be that there is something in this list that we can just click on, and maybe that would work pretty well for us. So you've got all these options to explore. Again, we can think about the position and the size. This position, and again, you could literally sort of just drag and drop this into the position you want it to be into, but you can also adjust the numbers. The interesting thing about the X and Y coordinates is that they will sort of center it in the frame. Mm-hmm. So if you want to go lower, you can do a negative number. So if I go negative 500, it'll bring it down. I think the number I usually like to use for this is about 800. So it's sort of covering the bottom of where Sam is at the top of the screen here. But again, I feel like you're dying to say something.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, along these lines, all of the vertical platforms are a little bit different in where their caption, like where their built-in sort of captions and descriptions and titles and different things like likes and whatever show up. So it's pretty easy to Google like a safe zone guide that encompasses all of those, and just grab one of those, put them into your project so you know that when you're putting your, text somewhere, it's going to look good on all of the platforms, and you don't have to move it around and make 4 different versions, one for each.
Absolutely, and again, I don't know how obvious it is from the screen share, but there is literally a black bar at the bottom of my screen, and part of that is just to not cover over the top of the elements within TikTok, especially. So it's worthwhile designing those things in. As Sam says, you can definitely go in and grab those templates pretty easily. But I mean, we have all kinds of options. I guess the important thing is just to set this up however you like. They've got backgrounds. I often like to actually have a background here and fill it with a background color. We can do that as a solid block, or sort of this section that covers just the words themselves. You can round the corners of that. You can change the height and the offset. There are glows, there are shadows. We can do all kinds of stuff there. And essentially, once I've got the basic settings, what I want to do is sort of just play through the video. I'm going to hear this. You probably won't hear this. And I really love hearing the sound of my own voice. It's just delightful. But what we're kind of looking for here is just to make sure that, the text reads okay. And sometimes what you'll find, and again, I don't know if this particular video will have a great example, but sometimes you will find that CapCut actually breaks the words in a really weird fashion.
Yeah, if you talk really fast like I do, it will make interesting choices, and you're like, and you have to go in and sort of split a caption and delete everything to the left of one side, and then go to the next part and delete everything to the right of it, and then you have 2 separate captions that make more sense. Which, honestly, if you have time, I wish I had the time to focus down on captions and make it so that they're only 3 to 5 words per caption. But yeah, go ahead.
But I guess to Sam's point, if we return to the captions tab here, we can actually come in and you'll see sometimes that maybe, like, let's just imagine for argument's sake, maybe we think that second line is just a little bit too long. Maybe we want to break this after testing. I think, and this is testing my memory a little bit, I think if I go Control Enter, yes, okay, that'll actually bring it down a line. But if we wanted to, we could also hit Enter, and that would literally make, I say that, it didn't actually do it there. So Alt, Enter, Shift Enter. Okay, so yeah, no, it was just plain Enter. I just mustn't have done it properly. So if you do find that you think it would make more sense to actually be its own caption, you can certainly do that as well. But I guess what I find sometimes... So I guess sometimes what I find, though, is that it literally, like, I could have the word subscribe and the sub would be one line, and the scribe essentially would be on the next. And at that point, I often just make the choice to go Control Enter to bring that onto a separate line, just to make sure it's together. So, I mean, the caption options here are pretty nifty, but again, like, I think really we all feel quite busy. We all kind of want to simplify things and we want to make them as easy as possible, but there's a certain amount of quality assurance that needs to happen. So you're not damaging your own brand. That's how I feel anyway. So the great thing about this, though, is once you are happy with any of, how this works as a whole, and again, just make sure you check all of these. If you come in here and you deselect this apply to all, you can actually make changes to individual captions. Yeah. And it could be that, and in previous videos, like I've had something interesting happening over here and I don't want the text to show up there, so I just move it down. And again, let's just try that one as an example. So, maybe there is something I'll replace Sam with, and maybe I want to bring this down a little bit and go maybe -400. No, probably not there, because it'll... In fact, let's try -800. So maybe I want to have it down there. Also, if I come in and select a particular word, I can come in here and I can actually change the color. So if there's something I really want to bring attention to, and subscribe is sort of famously a word I associate with red on YouTube and elsewhere, we can do that as well. Maybe once I change that to red, maybe that sort of glow effect maybe I want to change other things. Again, that's kind of up to you. I suspect I can probably even just do that for a single word. So maybe if I want to make that all caps, I can go to the uppercase option as well, or make it italic. Italic seems to actually change the entire text, so that's not a great example, but certainly a number of the other options are certainly in there as well. You do have options to introduce some animation, and I really want to encourage you, if you decide you want to add this animation, make sure you do it subtly and not for every word and every caption, because it can get very overwhelming very quickly. I noticed Script actually has an option where they will literally animate one word at a time, and I think some people need that. I think some people with ADHD honestly appreciate that, but I think for most people it's not going to work. So just, keep it relatively subtle, make sure it's complementing the other things that are happening on screen. And basically, when you're happy with your video, you can go and export this. It'll burn the captions on, assuming they're visible. And if you wanted maybe a version of this without the captions on, I'm sure you could just hide the caption track with the little eye icon.
Yep.
But the great thing, the really interesting thing, and it's fascinating and it's kind of nuanced, and I don't want to dig too deeply into it because it's probably not for everybody, but it will export the video, but it'll also export an SRT file, which you can upload to places that support it. And oddly, TikTok, who are the owners of CapCut, don't seem to let me import it in that fashion.
Right.
But I can potentially bring that into YouTube and Facebook and in LinkedIn and different places. So those are a few of the options in terms of producing those captions. Again, there are all kinds of tools out there that you can use. So, our standard response at this point in time is if something's working for you, don't feel like you need to change it. But if that is something you're interested in exploring, CapCut is literally free. You can get it on your phone. You can do it on desktop. You can even do it in the cloud within your web browser.